Hello and welcome to today's episode, which is all about getting to know starches. When it comes to things like sauces, soups, pastry, creams, that kind of thing, you've got a few different options of what you can use to thicken that up. I thought it might be useful to do a quick video for you talking about the different types of starch. I'm not going to go into a fully scientific and ponderous explanation of what starch is, but according to Wikipedia, starch is a polymeric carbohydrate containing numerous glucose units joined by glycosidic bonds. This polysaccharide is produced by most green plants for energy storage. Various starches are used in different industries, so things like paper making or even for getting really sharp creases in your ironing. I've got 5 different starches that I use to varying regularity, so I thought I'll do some stuff with those and then you can see what the properties are of each. The 5 different starches I'm going to talk you through are arrowroot, cornstarch, potato starch, tapioca and wheat starch. My understanding of starches is fairly rudimentary, but I thought it might be quite useful visual aid for you to kind of cook some and then you can see what they look like as a kind of gel. I've got a ring binder with a plastic front on it. I'm going to kind of show you them set on this. Put labels on there so I can remember which one's which. 4 of the starches in powder form that I've bought over the years from shops. But then I also wanted to do wheat starch for you. Now I don't have any of that like as a powder. So last night I quickly made some. If you've ever made wash the flour seitan or if you've seen any of the videos where I've made it, this is the gluten that you wash out of a ball of flour. I put some links in the description so you can see how to do it. So this is the gluten that you can make fake meat out of. And this is the starch that gets washed out of it. Last night I took a scoop of bread flour and then mixed in enough water to bring it into a dough. Left it for a couple of hours until the gluten developed and then plunged it into cold water and just squished it around until the starch comes out. Poured it into this little tub and then as it settled overnight, all of the starch granules, they've settled at the bottom because starch is insoluble in cold water. So I'm just going to pour off this top layer of water. All I do for separating it is just very slowly pour it out because you'll start seeing white coming out the bottom. If I had the wheat starch in powder form, I could do this much more methodically and do, 1 teaspoon of starch to however many tablespoons of water. I can't really do that because this is in liquid form. I'll pour a measure of this out and then I'll try and get the other ones into the same consistency. I'm going to microwave the slurries to cook the starch. So I'm going to use these little tubs from the takeaway. Put a little mark there, and then I can fill it to that line. To make the little things easier to get out, I'm just going to grease the inside, put a bit of oil on a paper towel, I'll just rub that on the inside. And it'll just hopefully make it a bit easier to get the starch mixture out once it's set. Putting a spoonful or so of the wheat starch in, and then I'll try and match the other mixtures to this one. So I'll do the arrowroot first, in a bit of water. I'm going to put in enough of the arrowroot powder until it forms roughly a similar consistency to the wheat starch. This is the arrowroot, and then that's the wheat starch. I've added a bit more water into that one, put the arrowroot into the microwave. To keep this somewhat consistent in temperature, I've heated up a cup of water in the microwave just so that it's hot, because otherwise the first slurry that I microwave, that I heat up, it's going to get less heat than the last one I do. Hopefully that makes sense. I did a little bit of the wheat starch last night. I did it 30 seconds and it had mostly gelled, but the underneath was still a bit gummy. So I'm going to go for 45 on all of them. Arrowroot apparently comes from a tropical tuber, like a tuber is like a potato, that kind of thing. But apparently it's quite common for it to be adulterated with things like potato starch. So it's difficult to know how pure that arrowroot is because it just says ground arrowroot on the label. So who knows? The advantage of using arrowroot to something like cornstarch is that it goes completely clear when it's cooked. So if you want to make like a fruit coulis or a sauce that's relying on clarity, if you want something very fancy for a dessert, for example, arrowroot is the way to go. This is very hot. I've still got lots of white bits on the side. I'm going to stick in for another 15 just to see if that does anything. No, is the short answer. The reason that it's white rather than clear, I think, is because it's getting direct heat, whereas the underneath is getting less direct heat. And it's not drying out because obviously the top is exposed to air. So, but yeah, so I'll let that cool down. Move on to the next one. It's going to give the tub a very quick clean out. And then I'll re-grease it. We'll go in with the cornstarch. I'm just going to do it to the same consistency. It's not going to look visually any different because it's just white powders in water. This one's the potato starch, responding very differently than the other two did. Yeah, it's got that, I think they call it oobleck. It's like a non-Newtonian fluid. So if you hit it hard and fast enough, it repels, whereas you're going slowly. Interesting. So far, the potato starch is definitely the clearest, which I kind of thought that might be the case. There's still some liquid at the bottom of the tapioca one, so I'm just going to put that in for another 15. And then finally, I'll put the wheat one in, and then we can look at them all side by side. The wheat's still very gummy. It's like not set at all, so I'm going to stick in for another 15. It's still very squidgy, so I'll do another 15. All 5 were cooked through, so let's have a little look at them all side by side. So here are the 5 little pucks, whatever we're calling them. So I'll pick them up and we can play around with it a bit. So the arrowroot's got a good amount of stretch to it. It's not just tearing apart. I think this isn't the best way of cooking it through because I am getting bits on the outside that are quite chalky, but it's what I could think of to cook it in the quickest amount of time. I had thought about steaming them all, which probably would have given a sort of more even, consistent kind of cooking method to them, but I didn't in the end because I'm in a rush. Then the cornstarch, so you can immediately see that just starts breaking apart as I pull on it. So there's very little elasticity in it. When I come to edit this video, I'll see if I can find any links where it has deeper dives and a bit more scientific explanations of what's going on with different starches. Because some will react badly to acid, some you can't use with dairy, so they've all got different tolerances. So yeah, I'll stick some links down in the description for you, so if you're more curious and want to know more specifically. So the potato starch is definitely the clearest of all 5. You can probably see through there if I want to hold my finger up. Bam Bam! Oh, you're gonna say hi? Hello, handsome boy. You gonna say hi to YouTube? Oh, you gonna say hi? What? Come here. Come, baby man. Hello. I see potato starch quite commonly in the ingredients of like gummy sweets, so I guess that kind of clarity and stretch, because that is, I'm putting quite a lot of pressure on that. Yeah, I guess it lends itself quite well to gummy sweets. This is the tapioca, and that's got lots of elasticity. Again, I'm being quite rough with that. Yeah, it feels a little bit latexy almost. And again, it has got clarity to it, not as much as the potato starch, but there's definitely some there. And then this is the wheat starch, so there's zero clarity there. It's still quite gummy, which is surprising. Yeah, and there's none of the kind of chalkiness on the outside. I'm not sure what to make of that. In terms of recipes where I've used different starches, cornstarch you'll see me use in things like the hot and sour stir fry that I did with grapefruit juice, and also the gochujang and tamarind hot and sour stir fry. That just makes a really nice fast thickener. You can also put cornstarch in baked goods. It makes it more crumbly and tender. I use the potato starch to make the red pepper glaze that I put on top of the za'atar tart, and it just forms a really simple, lovely glaze because it's completely see-through. I don't think I've used arrowroot in any videos. If I'm wrong, I'll slide in a picture or correct myself on screen somewhere. And then the tapioca I've used in the deli meats, so the beef and turkey. I used them in the apple gummies when I just played around with different powders. Just chucked lots of stuff into apple puree to see what I could make. I also put some in the gluten-free seitan. That was somebody else's recipe, so I can't say why they used it, but I assume it's because it's got that stretch to it that it gives a nice bit of chew. I also use the tapioca in the gnocchi, in the gluten-free gnocchi. Again, I'm assuming because it's got a little bit of texture to it, so it kind of, as you bite into the gnocchi, it's got a bit of something for your back teeth to chew on. The wheat starch I kind of stumbled on accidentally when I made the wash the flour steaks. The liquid that I'd poached the lump of seitan in, I filtered that down and then boiled it off to make a sauce, and it went very thick because there was some starch left in that poaching liquid. So it does form a very silky sauce. So it's maybe a good one to have on hand, you know, if you just got some beef flavoured stock, perhaps some port or red wine, that kind of thing. Make a very quick little sauce. I used some leftover wheat starch spawn, as it's known colloquially. I used that to make some vegan prosciutto, which is like a dry cured ham. Worked really well, you know, to say it's a waste product, worked fantastically well. And I also use it to make the cheese with some mashed potato powder. After this, I'm going to move on to make like a cheese fondue. So I'll put the link to that recipe in the description as well for you. I'm going to use the tapioca because it's going to have that stretch and gloopiness that melted cheese has. When I've been in the Chinese supermarket, I've noticed they've also got things like mung bean starch and sweet potato starch. So there's a whole world of different thickeners out there. I've just kind of covered the few most common ones that you might come across. But yeah, buy some bags, play around with it, see what you can make. At some point I'm going to try and make some more gummy sweets, maybe tapioca, potato starch, maybe some wheat starch, I don't know, and then some flavourings in there just to see what I can create. Hit subscribe and tap the bell icon for more vegan food curiosity and ingredient deep dives. And then head over to this one.